All right. So, very, very welcome to our session. For anyone that wants to listen in, now is the time to set up the headphones. So, I'm very excited to be here today with my wonderful guest, Antonia Albert. The First, for those who haven't been here before, like my name is Melanie Gabriel. I'm. Yeah, Sie müssen die Ohrhörer. You need to put in. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good. All right. So my name is Melanie Gabriel. I'm the co-founder of Yokoi. I'm currently an entrepreneur in residence at the ETH AI Center. And I'm also running a podcast and a newsletter called Follow the Gradient, where I basically share how to scale a business in Europe. So that is about my part. But today I'm excited to be joined by Antonia Albert. She is the principal and head of people and culture at Founderful. Antonia brings a founder-first lens to VC, having built and scaled her own startup in Berlin, which is called Careship, to 150 employees with backing from global investors like Creandum and Spark Capital. At Founderful, she works hands-on with early-stage teams to help them grow, starting with the founders themselves. Also, just as a personal note, I always loved having VCs that also come from an entrepreneurial spirit, because they just get certain things more than others. So I'm very, very happy and excited to talk with her today about how to fundraise. So we really want to make this session as hands-on as possible to talk about how to find the right VC pitch and handle tough questions. So Antonio, my first question: many founders ask what makes a startup VC backable, and from your experience, what are defining traits that really are the things that you look out for?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the key questions that every founder has on its mind, like how do I pitch to a VC, and what actually like makes someone invest in me versus like all the other opportunities like an investor looks at. First of all, I want to say thank you for having me. It's really nice to be here. I'm a big fan of your work. I think it's incredible what you do at the AI Center, and also the podcast that you started and are running. So I would really recommend for everyone to download it and listen to Follow the Gradient.
Thank you.
So now in my role as an investor, and I'm with Founderful since 3.5 years now. I'm in the investment team, and we back Switzerland's most ambitious entrepreneurs. So my primary role is really like to speak and meet founders every single day, and then we evaluate like who to invest in until we do an investment, then join the board, and then hopefully work with the company for many years successfully until like we exit the company. And in my previous life, I was on the other side. I was fundraising as a founder. I think I spoke to every VC in Europe. I pitched to every VC in Europe. I raised money from Spark Capital and from Creandum. So now, like combining both experiences, I can only share from our side now as an investor that our fundamental criteria, who to invest in, is really that we look at the people. So this sounds very easy now, but we really try to understand who are the founders and why are they doing what they're doing. And this also sounds now so easy, but in our minds, because we've all founded companies before, everyone at Founderful has been a founder, him or herself, it's just so hard to build a company, right? Like you need so many things in your favor. There's timing, there's luck, there is, so many other things. So basically you're fighting against the odds. And our conviction is that the best companies are built by the best people. So we really try to understand why is someone doing what they're doing. It's not like a 1 or 2 year pet project, like it is a 10-year commitment. And it's so rare to find, someone, how you pick your co-founders that's at the same time, at the same place, as committed as you are, to drop everything else for the next 10 years, because everyone has opportunity costs, and to really go out on this journey. So we try to understand the why, which means we spend a lot of time with the founders. We always say it's never too early to talk to us. Like I really engage with founders, like ideally when they first think about, do I want to start a company? And then we go through this process together. Second thing we look at is that we try to understand how they execute. And this also sounds now very easy, but there's this saying that the idea, any idea, is only 1%, right? Everyone can have a great idea. But to actually do it and to actually drop everything is a whole different story. So I really like this saying, idea is 1%, 99% is execution. And we try to understand how a team operates. How do they interact with each other? How quickly do they build and ship and test, iterate, run, test, iterate, run? How do they interact with us? How do they communicate? How do they reply? Because again, as you meet people, like everyone has an idea. Everyone has great advice on your idea because they know how to do it better. But then to really do it is a whole different story. And these are the two primary things we look at. And in addition, we also evaluate what the idea is and if it's solving a problem that many people have where we can build something out of it. So that's it. It sounds simple, but for us it's primarily the founders and their ability to execute.
And I think on the topic of the idea, I completely agree. It's the founders and the execution. However, when it comes to the idea, I think it is very important that there is not only the VC route. So, maybe you can also elaborate a little bit on that aspect, because I sometimes also, as an angel investor, I wrestle a little bit with really nice businesses that have nice income, but it's not a 10 or even 100x. So the VC way is maybe not the way to go. So what do you tell those founders where everything is fine, it's just not a huge market? Because in the end, that's your business model. You want to see a specific return.
Yeah, that's a great question. And because I think the truth is that there are many great businesses, but most great businesses are not great VC businesses. And now why is that? I think from a founder lens, I would always look at it in a way, there are many ways how I can build my company. And VC is now something very en vogue, but it's not the only way how to build something. There are many other forms of funding you can consider when you go out and pursue your dream. Like there are bank from loans, like there is bootstrapping, there is profit-based growth. There are different ways how you can start something and bring your idea into life. And then there is venture capital, which is one of them. So I just think that whatever form you decide as a founder, and the beauty is if you are a founder, and that's so amazing, you can really do whatever you want, that you are just aligned with your form of fundraising, so to say, that you take. Now, as an investor, and it doesn't matter as an angel investor, also as a venture capital investor, you follow a certain mandate, right? You also have a goal of why you invest. And it could be that your goal of investing is, for example, it could be impact. It could be returns. It could be relationships. And it's also important then to follow your mandate. And the truth is, there are great businesses, and it's very easy, to start to admire, someone that puts their heart into something, that goes out, that even has maybe early revenues and started something great. And then it's also very important to honestly look at it and just review it. Does it also fit into your goals and into your mandate and into your portfolio? So what I also frequently struggle with that. And I think the three things you can do is, first of all, as a founder, you can just be sure that whatever form you decide, that you are aligned with your partner, right? Your partner being either a bank or an investor or a VC or an impact investor. And then secondly, that as a founder, understand who you're talking to on the other side. Understand what their goals might be, and then align with that. And then also if someone then says no to you, don't take that personally, because people say no to so many different reasons, as a founder, like I took, it was so hard, like when you pitch something, like when you go somewhere, when you meet people and like you tell them your full story and like everything you're doing, and then you just get an email, maybe you get ghosted, but maybe you get an email and then they just say no, with like two letters. And that's super harsh, but on the other hand, like maybe it just doesn't fit in their portfolio. Maybe it's not the right timing. Maybe they just did 3 different deals. Don't take this too harshly, I would say.
And I think one of the very urgent questions, especially for first-time founders, is like, how do VCs learn about my startup? Because I know, as now having built a company, I know quite a few VCs. So if I would do the next startup, I would just call you up and others, and would say, hey, let's look at it. And you would probably take my call because we have worked together in the past. But what about the first-time founders? How do they get noticed? And maybe you can also explore it with an example of a pitch deck that you might have gotten and really also forward it to the partners because it somehow ticked the box or just like was different.
Yeah, that's also a great question, because I think when you start as a founder, like there are a gazillion of things you could do, right? There are many distractions, like, you start running around to conferences and shows and you're here and there and like you have so many things to do. But then how do you fundraise? So when it comes to fundraising, like my advice from everything I learned as a founder is really like fundraising is an art and a science, and the science part you can really engineer. And so I would really recommend, like if you go out and fundraise, do that only if you go out and fundraise, right? Like there are some people and founders that like forever and always like want to talk to investors. Like you get approached a lot, right? Like VCs look for signals, they reach out to you, they want to have a call. But like, don't take these calls. Like, like really only go out when you fundraise if you really fundraise. So I would really, and that's the science part of it, you can engineer a process out of this. First of all, you can prepare. Like put a good document together, put a good deck together, like put a like a Q&A doc, like just some answers together, and just be prepared like on the documentation. Then put a list together of people you want to reach out to and ideally speak to, and try to do that all like at the same time. Why? Because you get into this energy, you get into this motion of pitching. Like ideally what you want as a founder, and I'm just really purely now speaking as a founder, ideally if you go out and fundraise, you want to do it from a position of strength. So ideally at the end of the process, you want to sit on a table, have 3 term sheets, and you can decide who to work with. Now, that's extremely hard to achieve. So how do you get there? So I would say you can make a process out of it, prepare your documents, reach out to people at the same time, pitch to people in the same week, follow up, and move the funnel from left to right, like dive deeper into conversations, follow up after emails, and so on and so forth. And then there's the art part of it. And the art part of it is something I always underestimated, is that investing ultimately is a human-to-human business. Like it's a human-to-human relationship. And what I mean by that is you cannot expect to just send someone a pitch deck in their inbox and they're going to write a term sheet. No, you have to build up a connection to the person you're talking to. So like I went as far, like my startup was or is in the area of in-home senior care, so elderly care. I tried to understand by really understanding the person I'm talking to, what is their experience with the topic? Why would they like the topic or not? Like now that's a little bit extreme, right? But like you want to cater and have a conversation with someone that cares about your topic. And so it's a human-to-human business, and this is what I underestimated as a founder. Like try to build personal relationships. Like don't take a call, like try to have an in-person meeting. Like if an investor sits in Berlin, go to Berlin, say, hey, I'm 3 days in Berlin, write all the investors in Berlin, and just try to get as many meetings in as you can. Like there are so many things now that happen like virtually, and it became, like investing became so robotic almost, I would say, that this human element is not to be underestimated, because people invest ultimately because they invest in you, and not because like you on the second, like on the last page of your term sheet, or sorry, deck, kind of like put your business plan, and in 2027 your number looks like this. So I would really try to work along these lines.
Yeah. And don't underestimate also the FOMO aspect. I think like you just mentioned, like go to Berlin and say you're 3 days there, but also have 1 week where you have all the calls with all the VCs, because they also talk with each other. So they also will learn that this startup is raising, and this also creates a lot of momentum and a lot of FOMO. And if you just do it randomly, that doesn't help the FOMO. But if you really also do it a little bit strategic, because that is also the human aspect. Like people, especially in the VC scene, they are afraid of missing out, and that there is this very well-known anti-portfolio of huge funds that actually didn't invest because they didn't see it and are quite not frustrated, but they just know, oh, I didn't took, for example, the email or the call from Airbnb, and now they have it on their anti-portfolio saying, hey, we also miss opportunities. And maybe exactly on that part, like as a founder, because yes, you have to talk to hundreds of VCs if you're fundraising, and you get a lot of no's, but you basically just need one yes. So you one no is one no closer to yes. What do you say? Like, should you then just accept the no, follow up in 6 months or 1 year, or how do you see that? Because you also don't want to chase the VC so that you get on her nerves.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe just one more point to the last part. Like, it's yes, there is this element of FOMO in the market. I'm personally not a huge fan of it, but I also think why you should engineer a process is it's about your energy. Like, if you are in the mindset of fundraising, then you portray this energy, right? It's a huge difference whether I talk to just one and put all my eggs in one basket, or whether I just go out and people feel it if you are fundraising. So that's really important. And then I think also secondly, one founder should be responsible for fundraising, and if you go out and fundraise, it's your 100% job. Like many founders still to this date, especially I think if it's very STEM-driven founders, in the deep tech space, no one really likes fundraising, right? They all don't like it. Someone has to do it, and then 3 people do it a little bit on the side. Like one talks to them, the other one talks to this person, and the other one has a good friend that knows someone else. This is not how it works. It's a full-time job. So one of the founders really has to dedicate. For me, a good fundraising process takes 6 months until the money is on the bank, right? And this includes everything to putting your documents together, making a really good deck. This takes a while, to doing all your calls, to moving everything forward for in-person meetings, building relationships and so forth, to having money on your bank. And this only works if you have one person responsible for that. So this is just what I can highlight, because in the beginning, I founded my company with my brother, and we both did it. And there's this beautiful review from Harvard Business School about the monkeys. I don't know if you know it, but a monkey dies if it's not sitting on one shoulder. So everything you do as a founding team needs one responsible person behind it. And fundraising, if I hear, oh, the whole founding team is fundraising, this most of the times never works. And now what you mentioned that chasing investors, well, so it's hard to accept a no, but I would honestly in life, if someone gives you a no, let them. People decide not to move forward because of whatever given reason. And I personally, would focus on the people that want to spend time with you, on the people that want, to have another conversation. Count your yeses and don't look at your no's. Now, if you only get no's, then the market also tells you something, right? Then maybe it is not the right time. Maybe you are still a bit too early. Maybe there is something missing. If you get, no's and yeses, then focus on the yeses. If someone doesn't reply, then I think it's very legitimate if you run a good process that you follow up, right? If you send, let's say you go out, you send 50, you create your list of 100 investors, like you decide right now, you reach out to 80, you send your deck out, and only 10 reply, well, why don't you follow up after a week? I would do that. But I would not, if someone gives you a no, I would not go and like chase after that person, but I would I would let them be, and I would focus on these people that want to further engage. And if the whole world tells you no, then you should reflect on it. And this is so important.
And now, another topic that I find also very important, because we are here on the AI stage,
Yes.
and AI is everywhere.
Yes.
And so I would really like to take a closer look at the impact of AI on the VC world. And not only on the classical AI startups, so to say, but really also the AI capabilities and their impact on like how startups are run. So a few days ago, I read this really interesting article in Business Insider about how vibe coding is shaking up the skills investors are prioritizing in founders that they might fund. How do you see that? Are you prioritizing different founder traits that you did, like let's say 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's amazing that we are on the AI stage. It's amazing that you put this here together. And I think yes, AI, like there's a fundamental shift of AI, and this also like this also impacts how we work as an investor. Like it impacts who we invest in, what topics we invest in, and how we invest. So like also all our operations now. But when it comes to your question of like vibe coding, which basically means, to those not familiar with the terminology, that as a non-technical founder, you can also write code with natural language. So you speak to someone, you tell an AI what to do, and they start coding for you. The AI codes for you. So I think in that aspect, yes, we do look for different things. I think investors tended to look at, if you look at team composition, like you always wanted to have like someone that's strong on the tech side and someone that's strong on the business side. And now what changes is that anyone can code, which is beautiful. Like, people can go on platforms like Lovable and just build stuff. And it's incredible. So what we look for is, how founders work with AI. Like how do they implement that in how they operate, into their storytelling, into how efficiently they work, like how much less capital they might need because of less people they need to hire, because of more AI implemented. But also, how much do they like build, ship, and iterate themselves, because they don't have to sit down and like do all this coding themselves. And we had a beautiful session at the ETH AI Center where founders within a week, non-technical founders, came up with prototypes and demos of first MVPs that were entirely created with Lovable, which is just incredible. So I think, it's this like curiosity, like do you go out and see how you can be more efficient, and this vast pool of opportunity that you can have without, being dependent on, you need to have like your own full stack engineering team, your own like dev agency in-house or wherever. So yes, it changes a lot. It's still very up and coming. You now see these great headlines of companies or startups that raised very successful financing rounds all across Europe that just build products on Lovable, which is crazy if you think about it.
Yeah, it's basically the application layer that is now giving so many
Yes.
opportunities to so many founders out there. Now, if we're now back in the VC process, so you have written your email, you have had a warm intro from someone you have met at an event, and now you are about to pitch that in front of you, and then maybe also the partners. Take us through the journey of like what kind of is a killer pitch deck that has everything in it, and what kind of criteria you look at so that you really see, hey, this is now really worth to basically give it to the partner so that we decide on funding this startup.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So our process at Founderful is we try to be first, fast, and founder friendly. That's our slogan. So we try to be fast. There is no process we naturally follow, because sometimes things move super fast. Like we can move very fast and we can invest extremely fast. Sometimes we also like to build relationship with founders, and then the process is just like we meet, we exchange, like we spare, the product develops, and then we decide it's the right time to invest. So it's not so black or white. However, like a typical process would be we start the first conversation, and in the first conversation, the founding team can very clearly articulate who they are, what they're building, why they're building this now, how it works, and how big can this get. It sounds super simple, but for someone to really articulate that in a crisp way, in a clear way, because most VCs, and that's really the truth, they are not in your head, they're not in your lab, they're not in your office, they've never heard of your technology before. So just really try to stay, to explain it to someone in very simple terms. And it's always so easy to explain difficult things or to explain things in a difficult way, but it's so hard to do that in a simple way. Then secondly, we do an in-person meeting. So we really try to meet very fast in person. Either we go, to the founding team if they already have a little office or something in place. Sometimes they still work from the kitchen table, so we invite them over to us. And then we have an in-person session. Why? Because sometimes, you just sit the whole day in front of your screen, and it is a different type of conversation. You can have a bad day, they can have a bad day, things don't work. And then in person, it's entirely different. And we did have situations where we said no to something where we did not have an in-person meeting. And then we met the founders later somewhere, and we were like, wow, how could we have, why didn't we meet the founders? Because the energy was totally different. So then we have an in-person meeting. We always double down with, in our team, so there would be 2 people from our side involved. Why? Because that the founding team also gets a little bit of a look and feel of how we operate, but also then that we have someone internally to spare with. So it's 2 people from our team. Then we would dive deeper. We would have a little bit of a look at, how big can this get? What's the ambition of how big does the founding team actually want to build that? I had a conversation with the founding team 2 weeks ago, and it turned out, what they're building, they want to stay super lean, super small, it's too techies, and they just want to code themselves. They don't have the ambition to build a big team, to build necessarily a big company. And that's fine. They can be very successful with that. But it was good to understand. Then we would have a small chat and sparring session on, the business plan, just to see, how this could develop in the next. We try to keep it very simple, in the next 24 months. Why? Not because we want to put work on the founders, but normally when you go out and raise, you want to raise as a founder for 24 months. Why? Because you want to make sure you have time to build something. You don't want to go out after 6 months again and raise, because it takes 6 months for a good fundraising process until you have money on the bank. So ideally you want to raise for 2 years. You want to go out after 18 months and then raise again. And so then there would be a term sheet from our side, and then there would be the investment. So we can move fast, and sometimes we build relationships.
And now also, in light of the time, I have basically one, but it's basically 2, because I want to squeeze out as much as I can question. So once the deal is closed and the money hits the bank, what is that you expect also from your portfolio companies, and maybe more also in hindsight, what is maybe something that would make the relationship more valuable? And then lastly, and you can of course also combine it, is what is one thing also with your founder heads that you wish you knew earlier in this whole fundraising process, that you're now maybe also paying forward by sharing that with others that you back then didn't know?
Yeah. So maybe once we start working together with the startup, we are really in the same boat. And so what that means is that ultimately, the best possible relationship we can have with the founder team is if there is really a relationship where, we can speak about the hard things, we can solve these challenges together, and we can help. Now, it's very hard to get to that because it requires that we create this room of trust, that we move from this, I report to someone, to, hey, this is actually where we stand, this is how it should have been going, this is where it is actually going, and this is where we need your help. Because ideally, for the next 2 weeks, we work super closely. Like, on the hiring side, like we define, who do we need? Like we really go out together and we try to get the best people into the company. Why? Because the best companies, are built like by the best teams. And the first round is always raised by the founders, but the second round is always raised by the ability of the founders of who they could bring in. So, hiring is so important. It's not just HR. It's like, who do we get in? And we spend a lot of time with our founders. What's also very important is like building relationships with customers. So we really try to understand, like we draw it on the wall, like who could we talk to? Like how could we, like what industry verticals do we want to address? Who do we know? How can we make a good introduction, like on the C-level, in order to help them advance the customer side of things? And then what's also very important is like next to, like hiring, we call it talent, and then also like, building, which is like this whole go-to-market side, is the storyline, right? Like we try to very early, like actually, in the first couple of weeks when we start to work with a team, to already create the storyline on what we would raise the next round on. Why? Because this creates like a narrative that everyone starts to buy in. Also, like this narrative will change, and that's okay, right? But it's better that we have it there somewhere and continue to go back to it, rather than, in like after 2 years, out of the sudden deciding, but the next round, like what should we do now? So ideally, we really get into this like working mode. Like we are all founders ourselves, we love to work with founders. That's much more interesting than like, analyzing a lot of companies. And, we just try to be helpful. And if we are, and we can only do that if like there's like a trusted relationship. Exactly.
My last question was, what you wish you knew when you were like a founder yourself for this whole
so many things.
thing?
But I would really say, first of all, like really choose your co-founder wisely. Like it's the most important decision you take as a founder. It's so hard to find someone at the same time, at the same place, that's as motivated, excited by the same idea, and really willing to drop everything else. And you cannot build with someone that's half committed. So like really choose wisely there. Ideally, like secondly, like being a founder is a very lonely job. I wish someone had told me that before, because like, so for me, it's also like it's more fun if you do it together with someone else, like versus doing everything by yourself, and to also share, like bring other people into your challenges, like create people that you can trust around you. Like that could be your extended team, that could be like like a mentor, an advisor. Like don't be a stranger, because it's very, very lonely over time as a founder if you don't get into this motion to really share openly what you're really struggling with, because you're struggling with a lot of things. But the problem is that it's so gloomified. Most people, if you go out on the street, like everyone just asks, how is it going? Like no one asks, how are you? Because it's this expectation of, if it's going well, you are going well. And so I think this notion about it, like there's a lot of difference, that there's a lot of, the question bears a lot of, there's a very different energy to this question, how is it going or how are you? And then really thirdly, that like ultimately investor relationships, like because VCs always sound so, I don't know, if I look at all the websites, they all look the same, like if all these like talks about VCs, and so ultimately it's human behind it, right? And I would really try to build like a few good relationships there, and I would have liked to know more, like earlier, that this is like a human-to-human business. It's not that I go out, create my Excel sheet, and just try to get money. Like really, really think about who do you want to get money from, and why, right? Because people are very different, investors are very different. And once you have someone on your cap table, it's impossible to get rid, almost, not impossible, but almost impossible to get rid of them again. So choose your investors wisely by really understanding, what they are in for, by building relationships.
Thank you so much. We would have, I think, topics for another 3 hours, but
You
we
have
will
so many more questions.
But it was really nice to have this catch up, and I know we will have follow up discussions on that. And for everyone who is around, happy to stick around and ask your question. Thank you very much, Antonia. It's been a pleasure.
Melanie.